Aloha nerds, and welcome back to TheSalawag's Why It's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. Yesterday I had the pleasure of watching Blink Twice, directed by Zoe Kravitz, starring Channing Tatum, Naomi, Ackie, and Alia Shawcat. I was just watching a couple interviews just to sort of get hype up for this because I really thought it was a solid film on the whole. I do have a little minor criticism. But are you liking these glasses? I'm not used to wearing these for these. But yeah, dang, this is Zoe Kravitz's directorial debut. And I gotta say, she really knocked it out of the park for a first-time director. It's hard to tell that she is a first-time director. Like, you know, on this podcast, what you normally find for those who are not subscribed is that I will try to talk about the movie from the filmmaker's point of view. I've been a filmmaker for 17 years. I've studied the craft. I've studied what directors look for, and every director has a different process. That's the most important thing to understand. That's why every director's movies are different from each other. They have their own point of view, and they have their own way of communicating and also getting to the point of communication for their films. So when I'm looking at movies, and the reason I call this the Why It's Great gut reaction, Why It's Great was my original podcast, my first podcast, where I really tried to do my homework and do as much research as I possibly could, and where I actually put editing into the podcast, but it was just so much work. I reduced it to being the gut reaction so I could just kind of produce a little bit more consistently. But yeah, so that's the whole goal here, is that this podcast is not just a basic review, but I am trying to look at it like as a person who studied directing since he was 15, and that's my aspiration as well. I've directed some short films. That's what I'm examining, like, how is this director approaching this? And like I say, this movie was very, very absorbing right from the top. Very absorbing in such a way, again, like it felt like a very experienced hand was behind the wheel. I have to shout out to Movie Watching Girl on Instagram. I had seen a poster for Blink Twice in a movie theater, but I didn't see any ads for it at all until after I'd seen a little movie review from Movie Watching Girl. And I gotta say, on the whole, I actually agree with what she said, but I just wanted to shout out to her because she actually watches movies a lot. I don't know how she does it. She has a whole family, kids, the whole deal. I don't know how she has the time to watch these movies, but she consistently pumps out reviews. So if you are subscribed to me, or even if you're not, but you want to really get reviews that are up to date on what's coming out, then I highly recommend check out @MovieWatchingGirl on Instagram. Great reviews. It's all just written reviews on Instagram as far as I know, but she's the one that if I hadn't read that review, I would not have checked out the trailer and been interested in Blink Twice. Because as far as, yeah, I mean, I saw Channing Tatum taking a picture, but it was not clear to me, and it seemed a little creepy, but it wasn't clear to me what's going on here because I hadn't seen any trailer. So when I checked out the trailer, I showed it to my friend, and it happened to be the most convenient movie to see yesterday. It was just like, oh, hell yeah, okay. I mean, Movie Watching Girl had a lot of great things to say. And so going into the movie, just the way it starts up front, it kind of captures you with its creepy vibe without doing too much. You know, it's kind of, you get the sense that something is very off and wrong, and then you snap out of it, and then we're into the story of Frida, who works as a waiter at a very upscale business. It's the very business of Channing Tatum, whose his office building has an expensive restaurant. But right off the bat, I mean, we have very strong control of both color and camera work. You know what I mean? I think a lot of first-time directors, a lot of new directors do not understand the whole process of where you put the camera to communicate who is your main character, what's the most important information to see in the scene. And you as an audience member, you may not know or care about it, but if you really think about what are your favorite movies, what are your favorite shows, more often than not, it's going to be movies that have really well handled camera work, where you can tell who that main character is right up front, and it's not something that you consciously are aware of. You don't have to be. That's the whole director's job. It's this invisible job of that camera being so close to the main actor, especially in the beginning of a scene or whenever it's emotionally important, that the main actor gets that. They're the one who gets the close-up. I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. That close-up means something. And then how you control how you shoot something, that is what gives the audience what they're paying attention to. So that's why Quentin Tarantino, Christopher Nolan, Guillermo del Toro, Matt Reeves, all these directors are the best directors, because they can communicate to the audience everything that they want to communicate. And Zoe Kravitz absolutely does this right away, where we're just sucked into the life of Frida, the cocktail waitress, or just whatever it's called, that is her job. And after her shift ends, she and her friend, maybe from Arrested Development, I gotta say that made me very excited to see this movie as well. Like, maybe you cast maybe, I'm in. Okay, cool. You already got Gambit. Okay, all right. You know what I mean? Yeah, and it was just we're into their lives. They're both roommates and they work together, and all of a sudden they meet Channing Tatum, who is the tech giant who's recovered from his sketchy past, where he's made some mistakes and now he's apologized to the public, and all is good and well again. And yeah, it's and then what starts off as a very flirtatious meeting becomes an invitation to go to his island, his special party island, where he's going with his friends. And these girls don't even think twice about going over there. And everything is a party, and it's beautiful and it's fun. It's such a colorful, entertaining movie. And at first I wanted to pigeonhole this, because from the trailer it looked like a literal combination of Midsommar and Get Out, both movies I love. Ari Aster is someone I'm realizing I'm a fan of. Every single movie that he has come out. Jordan Peele I was already a fan of before Get Out, and then when I saw Get Out I was like, oh, you're a fantastic director. Damn. You know what I mean? He's like, you're my adult version, where Guillermo del Toro inspired me as a kid. Now as an adult, Jordan Peele is like my hero. So here we are with Zoe Kravitz, and she's absolutely doing this again, the directing is just so good. We're always in with the characters. The story is always moving. We're not the movie wastes no time with anything that's not important. And again, it's very fun. I took the time to watch a little interview from Zoe with Hollywood Insider. I can put the link in the description, or you can YouTube it yourself. But and she talks about she loves the horror thriller genre, which is so clear, because there's a lot of, again, there is that Midsommar, Get Out vibe to this movie, but it's even so much subtler than Get Out. Get Out is quite deliberately about the movie tropes themselves, as well as reflecting real life, and very much this movie is about reflecting real life, but it's not so much about playing against the movie tropes. It is just truly about whatever this feeling. And I like how Zoe describes coming up with this movie as she just had this feeling of wanting to tell a story about power and power relationships. And I just thought, wow, okay, that's what this movie really feels like. And the whole idea of like these cocktail waitresses get this amazing opportunity to go to Party Island with a tech billionaire, and they're getting wined and dined and having the greatest time of their lives, and that's part of the fun of the experience. I think it's kind of this. The movie has this weird thing where I'm not the biggest fan of the thriller genre. Actually, that's something more friends bring to me. I really just like action comedy. or mostly superhero films. So watching this, and I'm like, wow, this movie almost feels like the girl equivalent to, you know, Pineapple Express or This Is the End, when you're seeing everyone just party and have a great time, all the while doom is coming for them. But this movie does an even better job of really making you feel like you're part of the party, and that the weird sense of losing time, you know, they're all doing drugs, that you get this weird sense of losing time and not quite knowing for sure if something's wrong or not, even though you have a feeling that something's wrong, but you can't put your finger on it. And I'm not going to spoil it right now, but the movie just really perfectly captures all of those feelings. And I think I'm going to slightly disagree with movie watching girl. She said, you know, 2/3 of the movie was perfect, but it was just the last third, the final act, she didn't feel quite work. I think the final act works up into a point, and then there's a choice that's made that I do feel doesn't serve the movie, but I wouldn't say at all that it makes the movie a bad movie, because when we get to the final scene of the movie, even though we have this little hump that I don't agree with, I still felt like I'd watched something and I was a part of an experience that was just worth talking about, you know. Again, just the directing was the cast was so good. They say 95% of directing is casting, and that's not literally true, but it is true in the sense that if you cast right, your audience is going to be with that cast, and they're going to believe if the cast delivers that feeling that you can connect with the characters and feel what they're going through, and to be with these ladies is because it ends up being these 4 or 5 women who are partying with these guys who are all friends of Channing Tatum, and they're all kind of having this bizarre experience, and you're with them, and it feels honest, it feels real, it feels like you are part of that experience. It doesn't feel too plotty or heady. It really, when it comes to that word, the feeling, I mean, that's what every director is trying to produce, you know, and every director does it a different way. I think Guillermo del Toro also, he leads by feeling and by color and by emotion. But if you look at like Christopher Nolan, he leads sort of by intellectualism, by structure and structured thematic points that are very clear. And I think, you know, with Jordan Peele and M. Night Shyamalan kind of split that difference. And I think Zoe sort of splits the difference, but also she kind of leans more to that feeling. And I think she really, like I said, I say even if you watch this movie and you don't like the same moment that I don't like, I'd say still give it one more chance or something. Try, because I'm definitely looking forward to watching this again, because there's so many layers to what's going on. It's such a human and relatable movie, and it is very intense, even though they're partying, with all the little hints and suggestions of things to come. I'd say it's like the opposite of The Menu. I liked the movie The Menu. I saw that last year. But in The Menu, it's a movie where something's very clearly wrong very early on, and everyone just has to put up with it. In this movie, we don't know what's wrong, but it's always it's just in the back of your mind, this, you know, an itch you can't scratch, as Zoe described her concept for the movie. I just had a really great time, and I just don't want to spoil it too much, but I just want to say I really impressed with the filmmaking. I can't believe this is her first film. You know, it's really, really well constructed. This was also co-written by this guy, E.G. Tenenbaum. I'm sorry, I screwed up. I did read it. I just didn't write it down. Yeah, but really great cast. Channing Tatum's great. He plays this. You totally understand how these girls are bought into this experience with how charming and warm he is, and it's not that he hasn't played some level of that in other movies, but this movie's so focused on that aspect of his character, of his quality, that like I mean, I'm not falling in love with him, but I'm like, oh my god, I'd be having a great time with this dude too. He knows how to party. you know. And I was just like, when it got to the revelation of what's going on and all the twists and turns, I was like, oh man. And Channing Tatum, he delivers these levels and layers of performance that are, you know, they're not hit you over the head, but they're just this right amount of that kind of emotional, not confusion, but you just see that he's dealing with this experience. Even though he's creating it, he's dealing with this experience in his own way, which I really liked. I think it would be very easy to make him completely, like, the twist is, oh, he's a cold and calculating genius. You know what I mean? I mean, he is smart, and he is up to something. But he has this final speech at the end of the movie that really got me, that made me understand his character. And I thought it was very similar to Furiosa, where but I think way better, even though Chris Hemsworth did a great job. Chris Hemsworth's Dementis in Furiosa gets this final speech where you kind of see his side of the story, just a glimpse of it, and it makes you go, oh, that's why you are that kind of, now I kind of get why you are the way you are. It's not actually what I thought it was. And that's what I appreciate about this movie, is that every single aspect of it is not exactly what you thought it was. I mean, and the parts that you do think that they are, you understand why they are. You know, I really appreciate this movie's willingness to give everybody a little bit of nuance, a little bit of flavor, and Blink Twice was awesome. Hopefully this review comes out while it's still in theaters, because I do highly recommend it. And, you know, if you find yourself not liking the finale, I just ask you to then give this movie another chance, because as I thought about the movie more and talked about it with my friend, who we saw it together, my buddy Z, you've seen her in a couple reviews, I decided not to record our gut reaction afterward, just because I was not in the mood. I was really under the weather. But she loved it, and really described Zoe's directing as kind of like this book, like we were reading a book, where you're so absorbed in this character's perspective. And I think that's exactly that. I could not phrase it better for what she did. So hats off to Zoe Kravitz. Great job directing. Cannot wait to see what you do next. Holy crap, you know. Jordan Peele, do you have to move over? You know what I mean? Is there a better director than you? Damn, you know, I'm just messing, Jordan Peele. Yeah, you're all great. This is awesome. And again, Channing Tatum's speeches at the end, I thought was, yeah, I really didn't see that coming from him. I mostly know him again from just comedies. I never watched Magic Mike, but I mostly know him from the 21 Jump Streets and all that. And seeing him as Gambit was eye-opening, and I regret being a naysayer who was not up for him as Gambit. Deadpool said all the things that I probably joked and said myself. But then there was a clip of his scene with Wolverine in that movie. Spoilers alert. I saw this clip but then I seen this clip of him from the movie again, where he's confronting Wolverine about stealing all of his liquor, and just his delivery was just so on point. I was like, oh, you are Gambit. Just that one little moment was all I needed. And then, at least it was the first inkling that got me there. And then Channing Tatum posted this wonderful behind-the-scenes footage of his choreography practice in the Gambit moves. And I remember thinking, was that even in the movie? Like that final fight scene with Gambit and those other characters, for those who haven't seen Deadpool and Wolverine, that final fight, I felt like I didn't see that moment. It was just, there was a lot of shaky cam, and there was just so much going on. I really got lost in that scene. It does not normally happen to me in movies. Every now and again, filmmakers do completely lose me in the gray, which is what happened. But when I saw Channing pulling off this amazing choreography that was so Gambit, I was like, Matt, you're an idiot. You don't know anything. this guy's Gambit. You know what I mean? And then I went and saw Deadpool and Wolverine again. I was like, my buddy James is right. He's Gambit. He is Gambit. And I didn't even know. I just heard an interview clip where he grew up reading X-Men and loving Gambit, and he grew up in Louisiana. I was like, okay. Now I get why you wanted to make the movie. I didn't know any of that before. I thought, I didn't know anything. So to go back to back from going, oh shit, you are Gambit, to go, oh, and you're a scary tech guy. That was a fun sort of experience, like to see this sort of from 1 week Deadpool and Wolverine to blink twice. I'm like, oh shit, I'm seeing some sides of you, Channing Tatum. Not only am I seeing a wonderful piece of work from a first-time director, but to see some range on Channing Tatum that I'd never seen before. I never saw his sports movie with Steve Carell. So I'm very, not knowledgeable on him outside of 21 and 22 Jump Street. But that was awesome. And I was like, damn, 2 for 2, dude. 2 for 2. I'm sorry, Channing Tatum. In my Deadpool and Wolverine review, I said you had a big head, and that's why you can't be Gambit. But I also said I have a big head, and we are the big-headed people. So, but I'm sorry. If we meet, you may give me a proper slap. You, Channing Tatum. No one else. You. You may slap me. I'll give you one. You can have one. No charges, okay? You have one slap, Channing Tatum. No charges, okay? Just give me a good one. And tell me, damn right I'm Gambit, you bitch. I'll give you one. You can say, you do it one, and you can say that. And I will apologize and say, you're right. You're right. You made a name for yourself today. So anyway, yeah, Blink Twice was awesome. So that's why, as much as I can say spoiler free, I do want to spoil this movie a little bit. So if you don't want spoilers for Blink Twice, I'll just say I highly recommend it. I think it's a really strong piece of movie. If you're a fan of Ari Aster, and if you're a fan of Jordan Peele's movies, then you're gonna love this for sure. Like if that's the vein of movie that you like, you're gonna be happy with this movie. And what I like about it, my last spoiler-free thought, is that although it does have those feelings of Midsommar and Get Out, it is very much its own movie. And that is all I can ask for as both a filmmaker and a film reviewer. This is what I'll say about filmmakers. Every filmmaker is a film critic who got tired of talking and wanted to walk. And that is why sometimes I'm a bit harder on podcasters, because they are armchair critics. They're not walking the walk. They don't know what filmmakers go through, what a hellscape it is to make a movie, regardless of whether it's your dream or not. So I kind of just don't care for some of the harsh comments that people think that's okay to say because you're on the internet and your opinion is God. It's like, no. If I had a newspaper, I'd freaking hit ya. But, that being said, as the film review, I pass on. Fucking awesome movie. I really had a great time. So, you know what? Spoiler free, go check out Blink Twice. And here comes the spoilers. Okay. Shortest fucking title sequence ever. I love that this... Okay, talking about colors, because I said this movie is very colorful, very strong command of the camera work and all that. This is... When I talk about color story, right? I talked about color story in my Unbreakable review way long ago. It's one of my prime examples of how color is used to tell story. When we start off with this vivid shot of a lizard, I just got this distinct feeling that the lizard's gonna get killed, or the lizard is witnessing something, or something was up with this shot of the lizard, and the music and the vibe of it. It reminded me actually of Hollow Man, which starts off with a rat being killed by an invisible gorilla. I don't know why it gave me that feeling, but that was my first thought. I was like, oh, you hit me with a Hollow Man. You hit me with Paul Verhoeven. Even though no blood was seen, it was just like, something's off here. Something's very wrong here. I don't know why, and I don't know why. You know what I mean? And that's the experience of the whole movie. But then we cut to this very muted color. We see our main actress, our main character, Frida, played by Naomi Ackie. Hope I'm saying that right. And she's on her phone and she's doom scrolling, and then we realize she's on the toilet, which is like very real. I literally just saw a whole horde of those memes while I was on the toilet doom scrolling. And what I like about right off the top is that she's kind of hypnotized by her doom scrolling, which is again another clue. But it's also just kind of showing you this layered sense of the world that we all live in, where we are all kind of constantly hypnotized. And then amongst her doom scrolling, it finally ends with her looking at clips of Channing Tatum as the tech giant, apologizing for his past behavior that is not described, but saying that he's gone to therapy and he's worked on himself and he's a better person now, and la 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 la. And you just see in her eyes that kind of like that infinite affection, this longing for him, this longing for a thing that she doesn't know. And that too I resonated with, because I'm sitting here and I know on Instagram I'm drooling over actresses and actors all the time. And maybe the smart ones are the ones not liking my comments. Maybe they're the right ones. You know what I mean? I don't know. Or maybe John Glover is just very nice. But and I got that exact feeling of like, oh shit, that's me. Like to have that feeling right away. Like this movie could have started anywhere. It could have started with her making a microwave dinner, and that would have been relatable. But the fact that it starts off with this hypnosis of the doom scroll, which again, just the fact that we have to call it a doom scroll, I mean, it's like you're doomed to eternity, like Sisyphus, rolling up that rock up the hill. Like that's a very significant type of imagery and nuanced, layered meaning, which this movie continues to have. That the fact that, when she does meet Channing Tatum and then they go to the island and everything's fun, and they right away, the first night, start doing these crazy drugs that is like, it just right off the bat I thought, man, if you're taking that high of a dose of drugs, you may not remember what happens the next day, or you may just lose track of time or lose track of yourself if you've never even done mushrooms before and you're doing this massive dose of a combination of mushrooms and other drugs that's in a single drop, and you don't even know if they're even being honest if that's what's in there. But that's my first thought, you know what I mean? And I appreciate that later on in the movie, after all the partying is kind of worn on for these girls, and frickin' they kill Alia. How dare you kill my maybe? George Michael will be very upset about this. Or George Maharis, whatever he goes by. But I love that moment when Frida and Sarah, the hot survivor babe, who I love her. She's been in a few things. A Person of Interest, a couple other movies and shows that I've seen, but definitely in this she was like standout. Everyone was great. Everyone was standout, but like she was really standout. And she's the competing babe for Channing Tatum's attention. Little does she know, they're all getting his attention without them knowing about it. But I love that at least they acknowledge, it's like, what were we thinking? Just going with a bunch of strangers to some random island. It's like, yeah, exactly. What were you thinking? I mean, how often do you hear guys doing this? Like, pretty much almost never. I mean, you get to know someone, you go on little trips with them, figure out exactly what they're about, and then once you survive those and realize they're not a serial killer, then you do the bigger trip. You don't just go straight to the island because you need a vacation. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's just freaking, like, it's like you walked into the booby trap. knowing that there was a crate over your head. You know, and it's just, but it is that same thing that, like the doom scroll, something is so alluring and you fantasize about it, and the fantasy overrides your natural instincts or your natural sense of self-preservation, that, you know, you don't know this person and you're going to go with them to some random place in the middle of nowhere, and then you're going to give up your cell phone. You know what I mean? It's just like, all of that's bad. But it's not unrelatable. Like, the movie does a really great job of making that so understandable and relatable up front, when you see they're working the crappy jobs and the boss is kind of harsh, and, you know, and it's just a normal crappy regular work life, you know. And just to have that relatability consistent throughout the movie, to the point where Maybe is trying to tell Frida, hey, and I know she has a real character name, but I'm just going to call her Maybe because she's Maybe. But Maybe literally tells Frida, hey, something's really wrong here. Don't you feel it? Don't you feel like something's wrong here? You know, that first voice in a horror movie telling you, hey, something's off. And Frida, just so desperate to keep this life where she's being wined and dined. And this is another thing, by the way. But, I mean, before I get to that, she's so desperate to keep this experience of being wined and dined that she ignores what her friend says, and ultimately puts her friend in more danger, and herself. And it's just, it's the same thing we all do to ourselves and each other. I absolutely loved the Red Rabbit scene. I like how, in a way, everyone is kind of being drugged on this island to forget. Except for our male villains, our cast of male villains. Haley Joel Osment, I didn't mention that in the spoiler-free, but it was awesome seeing Haley Joel Osment as a literal villain, as opposed to a joke villain in Future Man. I love this guy, man. Tusk, I don't know if Haley Joel Osment was working between Sixth Sense and Tusk. I really don't know. But when I saw him in Tusk, and he plays this really relatable best friend to Justin Long, who's a real asshat in that movie. It's his character, not him as an actor. But, you know, he's so relatable and human, and then when Justin Long gets turned into a walrus, you know, you just see the shock of the horror of it is so real in his face. And Genesis Rodriguez, you know, the same way that Hot Survivor Girl gets me in this movie, Genesis Rodriguez got me in Tusk. You know, it's like this actress just pours out emotion. But the fact that they were standing next to each other, and I'm just feeling both of them because they're both such great actors. It was wonderful to see Haley Joel Osment back again in Tusk, which I have learned not to recommend to people because I'm the only weirdo who likes that movie. But damn it, I stand by it as a great fucking movie filmmakers should learn from. But I'll give it its own episode one of these days. But seeing Haley Joel Osment play an actual bad guy was interesting. It was fun, and you know, cool to see. Okay, you got some range yourself. You're not just great dramatic actor. You're great. You're also great as a bad guy, who gets his just desserts. Oh man, that was so good. But I really, one thing I kind of wish was different, which is, the Red Rabbit. I love the lady who did the Red Rabbit scene. You could tell she was kind of drunk and drugged or something. Red Rabbit, Red Rabbit, because she's clearly a bit wasted herself. And later, Frida talks to her again, and she calls her Red Rabbit again. And it's just made me think, run, rabbit, run, you know, and I'm like, oh, why is he calling you a rabbit? Makes me think of those rabbits from, you know, Us, you know, and those guys are dressed in red too. But when you realize the setup of her nail side hustle, that she does all these nail decorative things, and then she finds the Polaroid of her with long hair, looking a little bit younger, and she's got the red rabbit animal design on her nails. that was a wonderful payoff. That was a wonderful payoff. And I left this point earlier. Color story. This movie starts off with her at her job. The colors are so muted. You don't really see nothing pops. Everything's so like dingy and uncomfortable. And even where she works, where she's serving people, it's basically black and white. There's like almost no flavor to anything. And so when she goes to the island and it's so colorful and beautiful, that is just command of color storytelling, where the colors are telling you what the experience is, and you're part of it, just imbuing it. No one's saying, well, it's green out here, so that means fun. But you feel it. You feel it because we were in a dark, dingy back room collecting wine bottles that were then serving to people in a black and white building. You know what I mean? So that command of color palette is a huge part of storytelling. So I just gotta praise Zoe Kravitz and company, as I should, for just really understanding the medium. So I appreciate the command of color. I appreciate all the nuance with the multi-layered meanings. We have the snake in the grass symbolism. But with all that being said, I'm going to talk a little bit about some critiques. I do have some critiques about this movie, and it's mostly about the ending. So like I said, movie watching girl, she did not like the last act. I actually really liked the last act of this movie up until a key moment. So if you have not seen Blink Twice and you're still watching this, please go watch the movie first and have an open mind, experience the movie for yourself. Maybe you won't have this problem. Maybe you'll see the movie differently than me. So feel free to go. Please think for yourself. See if you like the movie yourself. And whether you like the ending or not, then come back to this. Because I think that your thought process is kind of the most important thing. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here just to tell you what I think. And if that works for you, then great. Okay, so we get to the end. They find out that the snake venom helps them remember, which I think it's a bit convenient and a bit, I understand the poison is the cure. It's kind of an interesting idea, but I don't think that's really the problem with the ending. I love how basically all the girls get their revenge. It's so awesome and unexpected that they just go straight to bloody revenge, and I'm like, cool. I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? After we see the horrific flashbacks. Oh, that's what I want to get to. The one thing I thought before the ending that could be different is when we first see the long one-shot flashback, which again, great command of camera and storytelling. When we first see that long shot showing what the guys are actually doing to the girls when they're on drugs, and you see them all getting bound and forced upon and all this horrible stuff. In that shot, we see one of the dudes being pushed around by one of the other guys, and he clearly doesn't want to do something. I read it as, oh, they're assaulting him as well. And I didn't realize, oh no, he just refused to participate in what they're doing. And I think there is a line there's a line from Channing Tatum at the end of, there's a special place in hell for people who do nothing, which I do think is a good line and a solid moment. But I think it was also a lost opportunity. That what happens to women in this movie, and I understand it's focused on that aspect. People don't realize that what happens to women in this movie, what happens to women around the world, this is not a thing that's specific to Hollywood or to men with power in America. This is a worldwide human problem, and it doesn't matter. The same thing that happens to these women, they're wined and dined, and all the while not knowing that they're being screwed or being led into a life of hell, where this man now becomes essentially their pimp and does what he wants with them. This happens on the poor people level too. This happens on every level of humanity. It's a power dynamic that is not unique to the rich and powerful, but it is more noticed when the rich and powerful do it, because of course, they also own all the media companies, so they have all the attention on themselves. But, this happens. This is happening down the street from you right now to somebody. But not only that, I think there was a missed opportunity, because when I thought that this guy was also a victim, I was like, oh, that's a super nuanced level, because now you're acknowledging that this happens to men too. And this just came out with the Hollywood Kids documentary show, which I didn't get through. I started it, but they were talking about one of the Disney young men, and I'm not even going to say the name or bring that up more than this, but it was a young man who was being abused by a producer, or multiple producers, and that's just the truth of the matter, is that men go through this too. The problem is, when it comes to men, because of how we are raised culturally, and they talk of, and this is the hypocrisy of our gender relationships, is that each gender thinks that they're the only one that goes through that. And the truth is, the only thing that's the only one who goes through that happens with your genitalia. Everything else, same thing. Because there's that line that the hot babe survivor girl, I forgot her name, Sarah, but she says, we as women are trained to compete with each other. And I mean, I think there's some truth to that. But also, so are men. I mean, that's why the world is the way. We're all competing against each other, and it is a social training. But not only that, culturally as men, we're not really taught to express ourselves. We're not taught to open up about ourselves. And granted, really is a limit to how much you should. You should have some kind of self-control when it comes to that. But, we're not given that same sense of group support and social support. We're told to suck it up and be a man and do what you're supposed to do. And so crimes that happen against men or boys are highly underreported. And that's just a sad truth that this movie, I don't think it deliberately doesn't want to acknowledge it. I think the movie just has a focused point of view, and it's just trying its best to tell that point of view. But I do think that would have been a really amazing layer to include in this movie if they had the time to do so, where it's like he's a victim too, and it would have added a layer to Channing Tatum, that Channing Tatum is also abusing him. I just thought, wow, that goes somewhere, you know what I mean? Because then when Sarah shoots him, it's just kind of like, well, yes, he didn't hurt you, he didn't help you, but that just makes me not care that he died, as opposed to if he was a victim too and he just didn't even know it, and she killed him by accident, then that gives your characters a little bit more to bounce off of, which gives the audience a little bit more to feel about the moment. Whereas, yeah, if you're just the guy who didn't do anything, then kind of just no one cares. It's just, and I think no one cares is a dangerous place to put your movie, especially in the final scene. Even if the whole notion is you're supposed to pay for your lack of action. But, I mean, you see in that scene, he was being beat up by another guy for not participating. So it wasn't like he just stood there and watched. He was clearly against it enough to get a black eye for it. So there's something not being said there that he's paying the price for. But all things being the same, I just thought that would have been a great layer. I'm not saying it needed to be in. It's just that that's what I thought was happening. And then when that's not what happened, I was like, oh, okay, all right. So he got shot. Okay. But my complaint. So getting to what I feel should have been different. When Frida turns the weapon, Channing Tatum's weapon, on him and puts the memory wiper drug into his vaporizer. I mean, I don't even get why he vapes while he's about to slice her neck either. I think this is kind of a convenience for the scene. Although I didn't want to see that character get killed, it did feel extremely convenient for that moment. And not only that, I think the worst convenience was that he absolutely lost his memory of everything happening. Because that's not anything set up by the movie before that. The way it's set up is that everyone kind of loses their memory of what's going on slowly, gradually. And and Channing Tatum's own lines was that, wow, you forgot entirely that you met me. All the way back to the island, everything. You forgot that you were here before, which kind of suggests that she was especially susceptible to this drug, as opposed to generically susceptible. I mean, his reaction indicates her vulnerability being higher than other people's. So when he just has television amnesia, I thought that was a little cheap, and it didn't play. And I don't blame Channing Tatum. I say this is something that does not work on television. It didn't work on 10 seasons of Smallville, where conveniently people are always knocked out whenever Clark Kent is using his superpowers. It did not work, but we just accept it. There's no acting that can make that work. Okay, no acting at all can make that work other than, that's it. I got knocked out, so that's why I don't experience. So what movie watching girl had said was that she expected a much bigger, more explosive ending, a bigger third act. And actually, I feel like I was very happy with everything until that exact moment of him about to slice this girl's neck. I really felt like everything worked except that moment. Instead of it being him about to slice her neck and taking the drug that was swapped, considering the high stakes of the moment, I think this should have been a more serious battle, where really it's a struggle somehow or other. The two girls are fighting Channing Tatum or something. Just make that confrontation a bigger confrontation, rather than having him wait for her to run out of bullets. I thought that was pretty. I mean, it was smart on his side, but also kind of just less exciting, considering how much we've been waiting for this finale. But I think it would have been much better if it really is a truly rough and tumble final battle between Channing Tatum and Frida in such a way. There's got to be some kind of believable way. When she grabs that statue, maybe she's really using it as a weapon against him and gets a good hit that allows her to have a few good licks in the battle. But have it build in some kind of way where instead of the drug doing it, he simply gets knocked out. If you're going to do it, have him actually get knocked out somewhere where he could have a legitimate amnesia from it. Because it just doesn't, I don't feel like with him, he clearly has done this for at least 2 years, considering she was here last year. So for at least 2 years, he's been doing this to women, and he's clearly had a history of doing something bad that he had to apologize for. So I just felt like that I don't buy one bit, that this drug just wipes out his entire memory of being a bad person. I just thought that is a stretch. I mean, I understand losing the last night or losing the last week, but to be completely shocked by everything happening, it just felt like a television thing. It really took away the cinematic quality of both the writing and the directing. Yeah. But all that being said, when she saves his life from the fire and then takes over, I love that twist. When we got to that final scene and they're back in the restaurant lobby, I thought, and the twist of her now having control over him, I thought that's a fantastic ending. That's a great ending. But the confrontation part, no. That final confrontation, I felt it needed a little bit more intensity. Maybe it didn't have to be a direct battle. Obviously, he's huge compared to her, so it's not going to be a physical battle. But maybe more of a cat and mouse. She's already snuck around and hid before. I just really felt like that. Just make that a bigger battle that's justified by what the characters are capable of, as opposed to simply turning the drug on him. That to me could have been done later, or could have been done somewhere in the middle. But outside of that, I really loved Blink Twice. I thought, fucking awesome movie. The whole team did a great job, and good job team. So yeah, that's what I got to say on Blink Twice. Thank you very much for watching. Bye. Now that is podcasting. I just get better every time. Don't know what it is about me, but I'm so... What are you doing here? Look, I didn't mean to offend you, okay? I just, podcasting. How'd you find where I live? I don't even know where I live. I'm not sure if I'm alive. Okay. I understand. I know what I said just now.
I heard everything you said. Think my head's too big? What you think? Huh? What you think, podcaster? Don't think I'm legit?
I'm sorry. Okay?
How big is your head?
I'm sorry.
Because I'm about to make a name for myself here.
I'm sorry. 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 I'm sorry.
Now, before I get real disrespectful and talk about your protrusion you call a stomach, I let you live today to tell the story to everybody else. Don't you talk about me.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum.
I am what I say I am, and I am Gambit. Walk on, punk. Walk on. I bid you adieu.